Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. And today I'm talking to you about a question that some people have raised on Twitter. You would think anyone would know the answer to this question, but the question that has been raised in the last few days by a number of the tabletop role-playing game industry insiders, the industry experts, the ones that make a big show about how they're professionals, and these guys like the OSR people are not. You know, they're not really part of the tabletop RPG community or the tabletop RPG industry. And these people are asking, don't tabletop RPG writers deserve to be guaranteed a living wage? Okay. So I mean, the obvious answer there is no, right? Because I mean, this isn't like working at a McDonald's, right? And yet this is sort of what they're trying to suggest, is that and I'm sure to them a living wage wouldn't be McDonald's money, right? Not even in Seattle, where McDonald's is like whatever the ridiculous minimum wage is that raises all the prices anyways, right? So they're basically saying, these people, these game designers on Twitter are saying that if you're a game designer, somehow people, we don't know which people exactly, the opinions seem to have varied, because I've talked about and debated with various of these people, but all of them agree that somebody should be paying them like, I don't know, $3,000 a month, absolute minimum, to write whatever garbage they decide to write. That's their argument. And I've seen it versed in a number of ways. So the first is, and I think that this is where the whole thing kind of started, was that there are people, even in 2020, who believe that the serious game designer of 2020 is the guy who works as a freelancer designing or writing for mid and large tier companies. Now keep in mind, this basically doesn't exist anymore, right? So I can understand why they might be demanding a living wage, some of them, because maybe even some of them earned some kind of a living wage back when they wrote really horrible World of Darkness books or something like that nobody really played, but that they were being paid a decent amount anyways, because this was before, you know, White Wolf went broke, or Onyx Path went broke, or whatever came after Onyx Path went broke, or whatever came after that went broke. You know? So they still had this illusion that they got to be the serious industry professionals, not like those self-publishing losers at the OSR, right? Guys like James Raggy, who you know, is just writing stuff and publishing it himself and making a fortune. So, yeah, those guys aren't serious game designers. Being a serious game designer means you go and beg people at mid-tier companies to hire you to write some article for a mage supplement and pay you $60 to do it, or something along those lines. And now those jobs are basically gone, right? Now, if you want to work in the RPG industry, you can either be a wage slave in a cubicle at a place like Wizards of the Coast, where what you're doing is not really game design at all. You know, you still get to pretend you're a professional. That's the thing you get from that. You still get to pretend that somehow you're better than a guy who designs and publishes his own game with the absolute freedom to make that game anything he wants and the chance to make or not make a lot of money off it. You get to think, I'm better than that guy, even though you basically have no freedom at all. You have to just put into technical writing rule ideas that came from people higher up than you, and the occasional paid consultants that were higher up than you for big projects like, say, 5th edition D&D. And all you end up doing is, you know, doing the actual technical part of the writing. But you don't get to decide, you know, you don't get to design a setting. You don't get to design a world. You don't get to even design a rule system. You have to follow what has been decided much higher above you. First at the corporate level, and then at kind of like the lead designer level, and, you know, sometimes with consultants, really genius consultants that design, you know, help to design the best, most successful role-playing game of all time. But yeah, so that's one option. And then the other option is you're making small print games for yourself. Those are basically the two options normal people have if they want to get into RPGs. So if you're making stuff for yourself, you're either you have your own publishing company, or you're doing a Kickstarter or something like that. There are very rare exceptions, people like, say, the RPG Pundit, who is so famous that people will, beg him to come and publish under their publishing thing, so like he doesn't have to, do the publishing part. He just writes, and they take a percentage, and he takes a percentage, and that's it. And he gets people knocking at his door wanting for him to do that with them. But that's the exception. That takes a real superstar, and most of these people demanding a living wage are very clearly not superstars, which is where we get to the second tier, which is people that think, that are game designers in the sense that they want to make these weirdo indie games that nobody likes, and what they're basically saying is it's not selling enough, right? My games aren't selling enough, so people should have to subsidize me. And in this case, the people isn't going to be like, because the thing that the first group of guys were demanding was basically somehow that Wizards hire them and give them a living wage. Well, yeah, you can get a living wage at Wizards. The problem is that's the only company left that can do that, and it's only going to hire so many people. But these other people in the second tier are demanding that somebody pay it. So I don't know if they're demanding that gamers be forced to buy their games, or that if nobody buys their games, maybe, I don't know, the government, taxpayers should have to pay them for writing a game nobody wants, which, can happen in some places. In Canada, you might be able to do that, because Canada is some kind of a Soviet totalitarian state, and there are people that have gotten away for years with doing art and radio programs and, entire TV stations that nobody watches, that nobody likes, and yet get given millions of dollars by the Trudeau Liberals because, they're propping up the propaganda machine. So maybe that's an answer for some of these people. Go to Canada, make a role-playing game about how great Justin Trudeau is, and it's Justin Trudeau versus the evil Western racists or something like that, and they'll probably subsidize you millions of dollars to keep writing stuff that nobody is going to buy or read. Okay. But for the most part, these guys have no idea what they're demanding. Like, what are you demanding? Are you demanding that you get to charge more and people will pay for it? Well, if they're not paying for your book now, they're not going to be paying for your book if you charge more. You're basically just complaining. What you're really saying when you say, I demand a living wage, is that you're saying, first of all, you're saying gamers should owe me a living wage. And second, you're saying, I don't know how to earn money. That's it. So I, the RPG Pundit, I'm going to now explain to you how you can earn a living wage in role-playing. The first part that you have to understand is nobody owes you a living wage. Nobody does, right? The only people who ever owe you are people that you've already had a contractual agreement with, you've worked for them, and then they are expected to pay what is coming from that contractual agreement. Nothing else, right? Employment is one type of contractual agreement. So if someone hires you and says, I'm going to pay, $100 for this article, then they owe you $100 for that article. But in every other circumstance, the reality is that you are not owed a living by anybody. So if you can't make it writing, what you really want to write is RPGs where you play, Latina shopping mall workers that are, undocumented, having smoke breaks outside the gay bar next to the shopping mall or something like that, and about the conversations that ensue. That's a game almost no one's going to buy. I'm sorry, no one is. No one's going to buy it, right? And nobody owes you buying that game. So you have to accept that you're not going to make a living wage off role-playing games. You have to find another job, which I understand if that's the sort of game you want to write, it might be really hard to get almost any kind of job, right? Because who the hell would want to hire you, really? Like, probably, you look like you're not going to be able to be hireable for most standard retail jobs. You act like you're not going to be hireable for almost any kind of professional job. And one needs only look at your social media feeds to realize that you're just a disaster waiting to happen and they don't want to hire you. So I get why you would really like to earn a living wage from role-playing games. But it's not going to happen that way. I'm sorry. You got to find something else. I don't know what. I understand that a lot of your friends in Antifa are probably trust fund babies. Maybe some of them will give you money. But if you're not making enough from the Patreon that you set up to not work, then I'm guessing you're out of luck. I'm sorry. But everybody else, let's say that you want to write an RPG. there are right ways and wrong ways to do it. And part of my business consulting, which I do for lots of people, I did it, since Wizards of the Coast onwards, is kind of helping some people, because I often get, sometimes I get some professionals that want me to clean up their work. I've done that for, for all kinds of stuff. For Corporea, I did that for Raiders of Riley, I did that for the Golden Scrolls, some other products that I'm not supposed to say I did it for. But I've also had some people that are like, I really want to design a game. I have no idea really how to do it right, but I want to do it and I'm willing to pay you to do it. And the first thing I tell those people, because you have to be honest, is odds are it's going to be really hard for you to make money off this game. I've never yet seen a game that somebody is doing as like their first, baby's first RPG that I think is going to make, an absolute boatload of money and do really, really well. So I'm telling you, you better be doing this as a labor of love. And that means that you probably don't want to charge, you don't want to pay me too much. You don't want to, you don't want me to work for you too extensively. But we work out something and I give them some tips. And really, I'm not going to give you the tips about how to design a better game, but you are going to have to learn how to design a better game. And what that takes is time. So one of the things that has to happen to get to where you can earn a living wage in RPGs is, an absolute crap load of time. It's going to take a lot of time. And during that time, you're working and working and working. You're producing and producing and producing, right? I have just had the most profitable month I have ever had in RPGs. I am earning a living wage in RPGs, and I have been now for a while. But I wasn't always, for a long time, I was earning very little from RPGs. And then later, but around the time I did Arrows of Indra, I was earning, an interesting amount, but that was definitely not a living wage. And, barring the crazy amount of money that Wizards got me, I came out with Dark Albion. That did quite well. And it made a lot of money when it first came out. Like most of these self-published works usually make most of their money in the first month or two. And it did that. And then unlike Arrows of Indra, which also did really well, but then kind of petered out, it kept going longer. It was more popular. Why? Because by then I was much better known, right? And so there was more ongoing interest. And by the time Lion and Dragon came out, I was really making a sizable percentage. I think when Dark Albion was out, I was making maybe a third of my earnings were from RPGs. And by Lion and Dragon, it was closer to half, and now it's way past that, right? It's a large amount of what I make a living with, and so part of this is just consistency and time. One of the big things that's been a big success for me was the RPG Pundit Presents series. But I was talking with a friend of mine the other day who's also very into RPGs, and he said, "Well, that wouldn't work for somebody else, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, obviously, because there are a lot of companies that make a bunch of little source books, and those little source books sell okay, but they don't get the same effect that RPG Pundit Presents has had of building up the popularity also of Dark Albion and Lion and Dragon. 'Cause that's the other thing. Neither of these games have stopped selling. They're still selling in really significant amounts. But why? Because first I did them, I made a lot of publicity about them. Then I did the Pundit Presents series, and I did a bunch of publicity about the Pundit Presents series, right? And then I did the compilation volume, the Old School Companion. And that one did really well also. So essentially, one of the things you have to do is work really hard and produce a lot of stuff to get to where you're building up enough critical mass. Because in the modern era, books never go out of print. So if you can build up popularity for your newer products, people also look at your older products, right? So because, when Lion and Dragon came out, some people bought Dark Albion. When the Old School Companion came out, there were people that also bought Lion and Dragon and Dark Albion. So they continue to feed off each other. Another thing you have to do is be absolutely shameless in your self-promotion. So you have to push what it is that you're making, and you have to know how to push it in the right ways. You have to know how to get an audience. You have to build up a fan base, and you know what? You have to like your fan base. You have to support your fan base. I know that anybody who comes up there to his fans and says, you know what, you owe me a living wage, probably has nothing but contempt for those people. And I mean, these are mostly like kind of SJW type writers, and most of the people that might buy some of their stuff are other SJWs, and they have contempt for them. So imagine what they think about you. Like, they must have several degrees below what we would call contempt for you. And that's not a way to build up a customer base. So it doesn't surprise me, right? While I'm very tough on the SJWs, I make my games inviting to everybody, including a bunch of people that don't believe in me, right? That don't believe in my ideology, let's say, in my politics or the stuff I do outside of gaming. I make my games politics neutral. I don't, there's nothing in any of my games that are a 21st century political message meant to be, bashed into you in the form of a gaming setting or a, rule or anything like that. I don't have a long essay about inclusion or something like that. Instead, somebody was pointing out, apparently the new Chivalry and Sorcery book has like a huge set of essays about how horribly racist, sexist, and transphobic the Middle Ages were. Well, that's kind of obvious, right? And I just think it's kind of stupid also, because that's not the point of what you're doing in a medieval authentic game, right? In Lion and Dragon, you're getting a world, a setting, the setting of Dark Albion and the general medieval feel of the Lion and Dragon game is the medieval world the way medieval people saw it, and through their eyes. Not through the eyes of a 21st century leftist hipster, with serious issues about Western civilization. And I think that makes it very different, because that what I'm doing there is neutral, right? I'm not saying the Middle Ages, we should go back to them or something like that. I would be completely against that, right? But I'm saying we should look at each setting for what it is and not try to add 21st century politics to them. And that means that there's space for those people. There's space for people who are more right-wing than me, because there are a lot of people who are, to be honest. I'm not that right-wing. I'm kind of a libertarian and with very loose social values. So there's all of that space, and everybody, because I know that you don't owe me a living wage, any of you who buy any of my books, I am super thankful for, right? Every time I can, if I see a comment somewhere, whether it's on the sales page, where I'll tell the editor to pass on my thanks, or whether it's in the RPG Pundit Facebook page, or whether it's in the RPG site, or whether it's on Twitter, or whether it's here or on Mewe, anywhere that I see someone say, hey, I loved your game, or even just, I bought your game, or even just, I'm going to buy your game, I try to take the time to say thank you, because that's super important, okay? And you have to do each of those things. And the final thing is you have to make games that somebody actually wants to play. I'm sorry. Whatever it is that you might conceive of that you'd like to have, if the goal is to do the game of your dreams, then write whatever, but don't care about whether you make any money at all off it. But if the goal is to make a game that will make you money, that will make you a living wage, you need to make stuff that is going to appeal to the mainstream. And the mainstream is largely into fantasy, science fiction, superheroes, that sort of stuff. And it better be clever, because at this point there's a whole bunch of books out there, right? Like Lion and Dragon is one of the reasons why it's, if I say so myself, particularly clever, is that it is both incredibly conventional and incredibly radical, because it is, medieval role-playing, which is what most people think they were doing all their gaming careers, but done in this super medieval sense that almost no other game has done, which makes it feel totally different when you play it. So this changes absolutely everything about it, right? And so on the one hand, it's going to be something that everybody understands. It's OSR, so the rules are understandable. You're still within the D&D kind of framework, but it's something completely innovative in the sense that nobody's done it this particular way before, and that's something that has turned out to be really appealing. So you've got to make stuff people like, right? And I guess rule number 4 would be just, don't be an SJW, because get woke, go broke, I guess. So that's everything for today. Please, some of these people on Twitter have been recently, I've just had like 4 different campaigns from big for their own in-group celebrities of the SJW D&D scene calling for me to be banned, threatening that anyone who subscribes to me will be unsubscribed by them. That they'll be unfollowed on Twitter, they'll be blocked, and stuff like that. And I'm not saying this to say, oh, I'm in desperate need of help, because actually over since this campaign started, I've had a net gain of like 30 followers on Twitter, and I don't know how many on YouTube. But if you want, what I am saying is, you want to join in on the fun. If you want to add to the frustration of these people, then subscribe to me here on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, follow me on Twitter. Check me out anywhere I am, right? And share this video. Share it everywhere. Share it where people might benefit from it, in any group that, you might have people that would be interested in getting some tips on how to make a living wage in RPGs. And share it anywhere that it'll piss people off too. Why not? Where it'll cause controversy. Just don't post it anywhere that's like completely off topic, because I hate it when people do that on the RPG site. So don't do that anywhere else. But share it everywhere else. Anywhere RPG related, anywhere general, please feel free to share it. Hit the notification bell if you haven't already, so that you know when I'm doing another live stream. I don't know when that's going to be yet, but I will soon. I've got some videos and some stuff to talk about and whatever, so there's going to be more stuff. And if you want to support me, well, there is a Patreon and a PayPal page. The links are in the description. But the best way to support me is to buy my stuff, for which I will be really grateful to. You are not obliged to me. You don't owe me a living wage. But I promise you that if you buy my books, whether it's my print books like Lion and Dragon or Dark Albion or the Old School Companion, or whether it's my PDF RPG Pundit Presents series, which are cheaper. They're small source books that cost from 99 cents to $4.99. Not that any of these are super expensive. I think both Lion and Dragon and the Old School Companion are like $29.99 or something like that, right? Like they're not super expensive. I might be wrong about Lion and Dragon. It might be less actually. So, but anyways, anytime you buy any of these products, and if Medieval Authentic isn't your thing, check out the Gonzo RPG Pundit Presents books. You're going to get something for yourself. You're going to find something you like in all of my stuff. Check out the links below. You'll see all the different things that I've got for sale. And this will make some money for me. It'll encourage me to keep doing my stuff, to keep doing my YouTube, to keep writing more books. And it will also give you something that I feel very confident you're going to be able to find enjoyable for your RPG gaming, or useful, interesting stuff. If you haven't seen the video that I posted just now about the, previous to this one, about the Old School Companion, I show you page by page what's in there. And, there's tons of stuff there. Even if you're never going to play Medieval Authentic, even if you're not going to play Lion and Dragon, if you're going to play some other edition of OSR or D&D, there's a ton of stuff you can bring into your own campaign from there that's really cool. So that's a great way to help me out and to help your own gaming. And, that's the way you make a living wage in RPGs. Currently smoking, Lorenzetti Oversize, plus Country Doctor.